Welcome back. Panelists here, Democratic pollster and NBC News political analyst Cornell Belcher, Danielle Pletka, Senior Vice President at the American Enterprise Institute, NBC News correspondent Katy Tur, and Erickson, a WSB radio host and editor of the conservative website, The Resurgent. Welcome all. Katy Tur, did we actually learn anything new this week about how Donald Trump runs the White House?
No, we didn't. And this is the thing about that op-ed. It only underscored what was said in the Woodward book, which only underscored reporting that many outlets had done, including NBC News, which only underscored the themes we heard in the Omarosa book and the Fire and Fury book, and the same thing we knew during the campaign. This idea that suddenly people are worried about the president is just not new. They have been worried about him since the campaign. I had countless conversations with sources during the campaign who went on to work in the White House who would say things like, this man is not fit for office, this man is dangerous, this man is going to get us into World War III. And those people went on to work in the White House and then started talking about how great he was. So this is what they say publicly and what they say privately. There's always been a push and pull like that since the beginning. We did put together a scroll of all the deniers of writing the op-ed, and we'll put that over there, Erickson, because we know the president does keep score. Yeah. He has been following who has put out statements, who had their press person put out a statement instead of them putting out a statement. Oh, by the way, Nikki Haley decided to write her own op-ed in the Washington Post, saying that...
Which apparently has caused some controversy in the White House.
Yes. I would say this. I feel like we've learned a lot more about everybody else in the White House this week, not about the president.
I think that's a fair statement. And my working theories is like Murder on the Orient Express. Each of the deniers contributed a sentence to the op-ed. We've got this overall thing.
By the way, that has been my theory. It's one person, but speaking for a couple
others. Yes. I think that's true, but I think there's a misperception out there that President Trump's voters don't believe this. I think it's actually they don't care. He is beating all the people who they've wanted to beat on both sides. It's not just against the Democrats. They've put him in the White House because he spoke for them. He gave them voice. They don't care about this. And we can...
They almost think it's funny.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they almost are amused by it, aren't they?
They like that Washington is so upside down because they feel like Washington has turned them upside down.
Listening to Kellyanne, I actually got afraid. I was fearful for the first time. I don't want to be partisan and go after the White House on this, because God help us, Chuck, if we actually have a national crisis, because that's Keystone Cops over there, right? And such dysfunction and a Congress that sits by and twiddles its thumbs. I'm actually fearful for our country that we have this level of dysfunction in the executive branch, because if we do have a national crisis, how do we deal with it if that's over at the White House?
Danielle, this has been that has been the split personality in my head about this. This is disturbing on one hand because unelected cabal. They're also painting a picture of somebody who's not fit for office. There's no good evaluation here.
Well, there's no good outcome, but I agree with Katy. I don't think we learned anything new about the White House. There's always the exact same theme, which is it's not what happens, it's how Donald Trump reacts to what happens that causes the trouble. And that is really the challenge. Every White House, I don't care what people say, every White House has had officials in it that have sought to do something different than what the president says. That's not the problem here. The problem is how Donald Trump reacts.
Does the president need to assert publicly, though, that he's in charge? I mean, look at the number of people that criticize, I want to put this up here. The chief of staff is quoted as calling him an idiot. The defense secretary says he has the understanding of a 5th or 6th grader. A former economic advisor calls him a professional liar. And of course, Rex Tillerson, the former secretary of state, used effing moron. President Obama had to fire Stanley McChrystal when his staff was humiliating Vice President Biden. There was this sense of the commander-in-chief has to assert himself. Doesn't the President of the United States need to assert himself?
Who's he going to hire to put in those places?
He doesn't. In this case, it's the 25th floor of the Trump Tower.
I mean, seriously, this is the reason why those ring true is because we've been hearing the same thing over and over for years now. These are not new terms. It's not new to say he has the understanding of a 5th or 6th grader. We heard that during the campaign. We heard that before he was running for the White House. If he fires John Kelly, if he fires his members of his cabinet, there are a very limited number of people who are willing to come in and take that place, other than the 25th floor of Trump Tower. There's a very limited number of people who would be qualified for that job to take those spots.
And part of the problem you're dealing with here is Republicans like to tell themselves this is a deep state conspiracy against the president. This is actually Republicans against the president. Republicans Donald Trump put there because the people that had surrounded him early on weren't competent to do those jobs. You've got the most competent people willing to do the job in place. You can't afford to lose those people.
I'm actually going to be, some people are attacking the anonymous and as not heroes. I'm actually going to be a Democrat who says, I'm very happy that they're there and they're doing this. I am, yes, disturbed by what appears to be a soft coup, right? Our democracy isn't perfect. It's the best thing going, but it's not perfect. And clearly something happened, was a mistake. And I am thankful that we have adults in the room who will check the worst of this president. I know it sounds odd, but I am grateful for it, but I'm also terrified.
But this is a slippery slope, Danielle.
The problem here is what you just said, which is you're afraid, and yet you're glad these guys are there. If we are willing to accept that Kelly and Mattis and Pompeo and others, John Bolton, are responsible adults who have good morals and good moral standing and are here to do the right thing and serve their country, then we don't need to be afraid. And I think that's the right assessment. We don't need to be afraid. But the person who wrote this has no moral courage. You can be afraid, and I'll look after you.
There really is a lot of concern among many members of the administration, senior members of the administration. Then I think there is a responsibility to democracy, period, to come out and say what that concern is and to put your name on it and maybe to do it in a group. So it's not just one person. If they are as senior as they say they are.
But that's what the 25th Amendment is.
Ben Sass told Hugh Hewitt the other day that this is nothing that is new. He's heard these same things around with White House officials now for 2 to 3 times a week. I mean, it's not just reporters saying it. It's Ben Sass saying it.
Yeah. But, the problem is I talked to a good friend of mine who does work for the president, loves the president, but says this guy, whoever wrote this, has made their lives extremely difficult now because they've done this the whole time. The president suspected it, but now he knows between this and the Woodward book, he knows, and it's going to make their job even harder.
But if you do come out, and I hear you on that, and I agree to a certain extent, but the moment that person comes out, they're going to destroy that person. I would rather have that person.
It shouldn't be one person. It should be many people, and then I think that. I mean, if you're really concerned, it should be everybody doing it at the same time.
Well, and boy, that will only launch a whole bunch of recriminations there. Let's pause it here. When we come back, you brought up Ben Sass's name. I'm going to let the man speak himself. Republican Ben Sass of Nebraska is next. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.